Unitarian Universalist minister Scott Alexander, who retired last year after 50 years of service, delivered a sermon in which he said, quote, "Happiness is a deep and universal obsession for humanity. From the very beginning, Americans in particular have made happiness a central piece of their national quest. When our nation's fathers gathered in Philadelphia," he wrote, in 1776, "to draft the official declaration for this new republic, they found happiness so fundamental that they adopted this founding document unanimously. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." My good friend Reverend Scott says, "From the very beginning as a people, we have been passionately devoted to pursuing our individual happiness. The American dream holds that each one of us, no matter how limited we are by birth, background, or nature, can achieve for him or herself whatever measure of fulfillment of life we desire. It falls to each of us, of course, to determine just exactly what that means. The Declaration of Independence does not define the pursuit of happiness. As Reverend Alexander pointed out, while many cultures exalt the well-being of the total community as the highest social good, we in America have consistently regarded the happiness and freedom of individuals as the primary goal of our society. Happiness, Scott suggests, is first and foremost an utterly subjective, internal, personal experience. I never did have much success, and what I gained, I didn't keep. I never drove a Porsche. I'll drive one in my sleep. So goes the poem of Peter Haas. So goes the life of the wolf. I have fought the good fight against consumerism culture, and I have often paid a dear price for it. I am, by many measurements, a failure in the eyes of some beholders. We all measure happiness by our own set of standards, notwithstanding the rich and omnipresent advertising empire with its massive power of persuasion. I consider that I have, in fact, exerted an overwhelming amount of time and energy resisting that commercial power to coerce, connive, and mesmerize me. I am so grateful in my journeys through this amazing life that I have found the beat of different drummers, other voices. One of those recent voices, and I brought it in with me, but I don't know where I put it, is one of those recent voices which affirms my quest for happiness is right there in the right hand, Judy White, who is our occasional All Souls guest. And she wrote this Bodhi leaf. Several of you have copy. Judy ends one of her reflections in the book with this, quote, "We are all sustained by the richness of our lives well lived." I am grateful for the way that Judy phrased that deep reflection. It reminds me that there is a difference between a life of success and a life well lived. As Mark Twain explained it, happiness ain't a thing in itself. It's only a contrast with something that ain't pleasant. Or Abe Lincoln, who claimed most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And Timothy Miller wrote a book about it where he said, the secret of happiness is to want what you have. Mm-hmm. I think he might have borrowed that quote. Reverend Scott Alexander ended his reflections in his sermon with the belief that happiness is an interior reality of the heart that has little to do with outward circumstance or the trappings of comfort or good health or being well born. He recalls that Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl expressed, quote, profound moments of happiness he found amidst the horrors of Auschwitz. Viktor Frankl talked about, quote, watching beautiful hot red winter sunsets etched against the trees, sharing a crust of bread with a fellow prisoner, being filled with joy as he remembered the love he and his wife had for each other. Frankl was able to find joy even in a death camp. Now, before I wrap it up, for my part, I promised you a chance to share, to talk about what happiness means to you, what makes you happy, or whether happiness is an important element in the spiritual life at all. And I've given you some clues to think about, so what do you have to say? Unitarian Universalist author Jeffrey Lockwood wrote A Mother's Socks. It's a tale within a tale about a Buddhist monk and about Jeffrey's wife, Nan. And so I'd like to close by sharing this with you. You can also find this story on the UUA.org website at Worship Web. Once upon a time, a thief sneaked into the room of a sleeping Buddhist monk. As the burglar rummaged about, the monk awoke. The startled thief ran into the snowy streets with the monk racing after him. "Please stop," called the monk. And the man finally did, realizing that his pursuer was no threat. "You'll need this," the monk was gasping as he handed the thief his own coat. "What do you mean?" the man asked. "I saw that you dashed from my room into the cold without so much as a winter wrap, and I realized that I had both a woolen blanket and a coat." Now he says, having heard this implausible tale of sainthood years ago, Jeffrey explains, "I forgot the details but remembered the essential events. For whatever reason, this parable stuck with me. It rattled around in my skeptical mind until the day my wife played the role of the Buddhist monk. Nan and I had headed into the mountains for a day of skiing with our children, who were 4 and 6 at the time. In the chaos of packing up that morning, we'd forgotten our daughter's mittens. The wind was whipping and mercury hovered in the teens, so no mittens meant no skiing. But for Nan, the solution was as obvious as it was simple. She always wore 2 pairs of socks, so she removed the outer layer and pulled them over Aaron's hands. The problem solved, we headed down the trail. I found her approach rather clever, the sort of practical motherly thinking that often eludes my analytical mind, but hardly heroic. However, the bitter cold and the woolen warmth evoked that parable of the monk's coat. Among the snow-hushed pines, I remembered how the dialogue ended. "I don't understand," the thief said. "It is simple. You have nothing at all to keep you warm," the monk answered. "But you're a fool to give away your coat, leaving you with only a blanket," the man replied, while reaching for the garment. The monk said, "If I had 2 gloves on one hand and none on the other, would I be a fool to put one of them on my bare hand?" The man said nothing, took the coat, and hurried down the street. When we are not alienated, when love draws us into the suffering of others, when we see our happiness entwined in their well-being, then generosity is neither foolish nor heroic. It is the simplest and most obvious choice. So may it be.